Piers Morgan says Meghan Markle is the biggest PR disaster of the modern royal era. He never has. But when Britain's most controversial broadcaster declares that Meghan Markle is the single biggest public relations catastrophe in modern royal histories, or passing even, Prince Andrew's disastrous BBC interview, even Edward VIII's abdication crisis, you have to sit up and take notice. Because love him or loathe him, Piers has been proven right about Meghan time and time again. And what he's saying now should send shivers down the spine of everyone in the Sussex camp. Let's rewind to where this all began, because the Piers Morgan versus Meghan Markle saga is one of the most bitter public feuds in recent media history. And it's a feud that's cost both of them dearly, though, arguably, Meghan has paid the higher price. Morgan claims they were friends once. They exchanged messages, had drinks in London, seemed to genuinely get on. Then Harry came along, and according to Piers, he was ghosted completely. She stopped returning messages, stopped acknowledging him, cut him off entirely. Now, you might think that's just celebrity behavior. People move in different circles, priorities change. But Piers took it personally, very personally. And when someone like Piers Morgan feels scorned, he doesn't just move on quietly. He goes to war. Fast forward to March 2021, and that explosive Oprah interview. You remember Ithia accusations of racism within the royal family, the claims about being suicidal and denied help, the tears, the drama, the global headlines. Meghan positioned herself as the victim of a cold, uncaring institution that had destroyed her mental health and discriminated against her son. The next morning on Good Morning Britain, Piers did something that would end his career at ITV, but cement his position as Meghan's most vocal critic. He said, quite simply, that he didn't believe her. Not a word of it. He questioned her claims about being suicidal. He questioned the racism allegations. He questioned everything. The backlash was immediate and ferocious. Ofcom received over 57,000 complaints, the most in British broadcasting history. Mental health charity Mind condemned his comments. His own co-host Alex Beresford challenged him on air, leading to Piers walking off set in fury. Within days, he'd left Good Morning Britain altogether. It looked like Meghan had won. Piers was out of a job. She had the sympathy of millions. The narrative seemed set in stone. But here's the thing, and this is what makes Piers Morgan's vindication so remarkable. Nearly everything he questioned has since been proven either false, exaggerated, or highly dubious. The claim that Archie was denied a title because of his race, completely untrue. The rules on titles were established by King George V in 1917, and Archie wasn't entitled to be a prince at birth because he wasn't the child of a direct heir. That's protocol, not racism. The claim that the wedding happened 3 days before the televised ceremony, the Archbishop of Canterbury himself clarified that what happened was a private exchange of vows, not a legal wedding. The legal wedding was the one we all watched. The claim about being trapped, voiceless, unable to speak. She did over 70 engagements, gave speeches, had a platform that most people would kill for. The evidence simply doesn't support the narrative of a silenced woman. And the allegations about who made comments about Archie's skin color, those have shifted and changed so many times that even sympathetic observers are confused. First, it was a family member. Then Harry said it wasn't the Queen or Philip. Then in the Oprah interview, there were concerns and conversations, plural. The story keeps changing. For those of you who want the unfiltered truth about what's really happening in the royal world, make sure you're subscribed to Royal Daily Report. We cut through the PR spin and bring you the facts that others won't touch. Hit that subscribe button now and join our community of royal truth seekers. Piers Morgan's central argument, and it's becoming harder to dispute, is that Meghan Markle has achieved something truly spectacular in the worst possible way. She's managed to turn herself from one of the most beloved newcomers to the royal family into one of the most mistrusted public figures in Britain, and increasingly in America too. Think about where she started. The engagement announcement in 2017 was met with genuine excitement. Here was a biracial American actress joining the British royal family. It was historic, it was modern, it was everything the monarchy needed to prove it could evolve. The wedding in May 2018 was watched by billions. Her approval ratings were sky-high. She was being compared to Diana. Less than 7 years later, she's polling worse than Prince Andrew in Britain. Prince Andrew, the man who had that car crash Newsnight interview about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Let that sink in for a moment. How do you go from being the fresh-faced bride that the nation embraced to being less popular than a prince, who had to step back from royal duties due to his association with a convicted sex offender? That's not just a PR disaster. That's a PR apocalypse. Morgan argues that it's because Meghan is fundamentally dishonest, that she says one thing and does another, that she plays the victim whilst simultaneously wielding enormous power and influence, that she demands privacy whilst selling her private life for millions, that she positions herself as a voice for the voiceless whilst silencing anyone who criticizes her, and the evidence keeps mounting in his favor. Take the privacy issue. Harry and Meghan left the royal family citing intrusive media coverage and a desire to live a quiet, private life. Fair enough, you might think, except they then signed a deal with Netflix rumored to be worth over £100 million, specifically to produce content about their private lives. They did a 6-hour documentary series that was literally called Harry and Meghan and consisted of them talking about their private lives. They released a book, Harry's memoir, Spare, that contained intimate details about everything from drug use to the number of people he'd killed in Afghanistan to fights with William. This isn't seeking privacy. This is monetizing publicity whilst complaining about publicity. And the public isn't stupid. They can see the contradiction. Piers Morgan has been hammering this point relentlessly, and it's resonating because it's demonstrably true. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot be private public figures. You cannot demand to be left alone, whilst simultaneously courting attention and profiting from that attention. Then there's the victimhood narrative, and this is where Morgan's criticism cuts deepest. Meghan positions herself as someone who's been uniquely persecuted, uniquely discriminated against, uniquely oppressed. She's compared herself to Nelson Mandela. She suggested the royal family treated her worse than they treated anyone else in history. But as Morgan points out with increasing exasperation, she married into one of the most privileged families on earth. She lived in palaces. She had staff waiting on her hand and foot. She traveled in private jets and chauffeur-driven cars. She had a platform to speak to millions. Yes, she faced racist abuse from trolls online, and that's utterly inexcusable. Yes, the British tabloids were often cruel and invasive, and that's indefensible. But the idea that she's a victim on par with people who've faced genuine oppression, genuine poverty, genuine discrimination that's affected their life chances, and safety, it rings hollow. And when you're a multimillionaire complaining about your oppression from your $14 million mansion in Montecito, people stop sympathizing and start resenting you. Morgan's most devastating critique is about credibility. He argues that Meghan has told so many demonstrable untruths, made so many claims that don't stand up to scrutiny, that nothing she says can be trusted anymore. The timeline inconsistencies, the changing stories, the allegations that palace staff have quietly rebutted, the lawsuit against the Mail on Sunday where her own father contradicted her version of events, the staff members who've left, the reports of bullying that she refused to properly address. None of this individually might be damning, but cumulatively, it paints a picture of someone who's economical with the truth, who shapes reality to suit her narrative, who doesn't let facts get in the way of a good story. And once that reputation is established, it's almost impossible to shake. It's why the PR firms keep failing, because you can't PR your way out of a credibility crisis. If you're finding this analysis valuable, remember to subscribe to Royal Daily Report. We're not afraid to tackle the difficult questions and challenge the official narratives. Make sure you're part of our growing community by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Now, Morgan's critics, and there are many, argued that he's obsessed, that his constant criticism of Meghan is unhealthy, that he needs to move on. And there's some truth to that. The man does bring her up a lot. He's built a significant part of his post-GMB career around criticizing her. But here's the uncomfortable reality. He keeps being proven right. When he said the Oprah interview was full of inconsistencies, he was mocked. Then the inconsistencies became undeniable. When he said the Netflix series would be a ratings disaster, people said he was bitter. Then the viewing figures told their own story. When he said the American public would turn on her, people said he was delusional. Then the polling data from the US showed her approval ratings tanking. When he said the constant victim narrative would backfire, people said he was cruel. Then even sympathetic media outlets started questioning whether the Sussexes needed to change their approach. Morgan argues that Meghan represents something deeply problematic in modern celebrity culture. the blurring of truth and narrative, the use of serious issues like racism and mental health as shields against legitimate criticism. And whether you like Piers Morgan or not, that's a serious point worth considering. The modern royal era that Morgan references includes some genuinely disastrous moments. Princess Diana's Panorama interview, which was later revealed to have been obtained through deception. Prince Andrew's Newsnight catastrophe. Charles and Camilla's various scandals in the 1990s, Sarah Ferguson's toe-sucking photographs, the annus horribilis of 1992 when 3 royal marriages collapsed. But Morgan argues that none of them have done as much damage to the monarchy's reputation as Meghan Markle, because all of those were scandals that happened to flawed individuals who were still fundamentally supportive of the institution. Meghan and Harry have actively attacked the institution itself. From the outside, using the global media they claim to despise, they've accused the royal family of racism without providing evidence or naming names. They've suggested the institution is cruel and uncaring. They've portrayed themselves as victims of a toxic system. And they've done all of this whilst trading on their royal titles and status. That's not just a PR disaster for Meghan and Harry. That's a PR disaster for the entire monarchy. It's given ammunition to Republicans. It's divided opinion. It's created a narrative of the royal family as potentially racist, definitely out of touch, and willing to destroy a young woman's mental health. Whether that narrative is true is almost irrelevant at this point. The damage is done. And that, argues Morgan, is why Meghan Markle is the biggest PR disaster of the modern royal era. Not because she's faced scandals herself, but because she's created a scandal that's engulfed the entire institution. The king is dealing with cancer. He's trying to streamline the monarchy to make it more relevant to modern Britain. And yet, every time there's a Sussex development, it dominates the headlines. Every time Meghan or Harry speaks, the royal family has to deal with the fallout. That's not just a distraction. That's an active threat to the monarchy's long-term viability. Morgan's solution. He argues that the royal family should strip Harry and Meghan of their titles, that they should be referred to as Mr. and Mrs. Mountbatten Windsor, that they should have to make it on their own merits without the royal connection. They simultaneously criticize and exploit. Would that work? Possibly. It would certainly remove the contradiction of attacking the institution whilst benefiting from its prestige. But it would also create a new wave of headlines, new accusations of cruelty, new chapters in the victim narrative. The royal family is trapped. If they do nothing, the Sussexes continue to trade on their titles whilst attacking the institution. If they act, they look vindictive and prove Harry and Meghan's point about being treated badly. It's a lose-lose situation, created by what Piers Morgan correctly identifies as the most catastrophic PR disaster in modern royal history. Whether you think Piers Morgan is a brave truth-teller or an obsessive bully probably depends on your view of Meghan Markle. But the facts are becoming increasingly difficult to dispute. Meghan has gone from beloved to reviled in record time. Her claims have been repeatedly challenged and often debunked. Her approval ratings are in free fall on both sides of the Atlantic. And the PR disaster she's created isn't just personal, it's institutional. Morgan may be vindicated, but there's no joy in watching this play out. Because whatever you think of Meghan Markle, the damage to the monarchy, to public discourse, to the serious issues of racism and mental health that have been caught up in this saga, that damage is real and lasting. The biggest PR disaster of the modern royal era isn't just about one woman. It's about what happens when celebrity, victimhood, and institutional power collide in the age of social media and global communication. And none of us should be celebrating that.